Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we are doing another sewing tutorial. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Lisa Huang, and today I'm going to teach you guys how to make the mock neck open back t-shirt. You can make it with or without sleeves for two completely different looks. It's going to be your favorite go-to pattern because it's so simple. For the best fit, I would recommend that you take your bust and waist measurements and then find your size according to the size chart. Maybe even size down one size if you want it to be really fitted, but keep in mind that you have to use a really stretchy fabric because the neck is rather fitted and your head still has to fit through the hole. If you want to save yourself some time, you can just go ahead and buy a pre-made trim or ribbon so you don't have to sew it later. As you're cutting your pattern pieces out on the fabric, don't forget to line up the grain line to the selvage of the fabric so that everything can lay nice and straight once you're done. As you can see, I like to use weights versus pinning my pattern piece to the fabric just because I think it's a little bit more efficient, and I also have this shiny finish on my fabric that makes it kind of hard to pin. Cutting is my least favorite part about sewing. I know it has to be done, but I just hate doing it. But once you get all your pattern pieces all cut out, you're going to take the front and back of the top and sew it together at the shoulder seam. For this particular project, I am using an 80-12 needle and using very small stitching length of between 1 to 2. If you're on a home sewing machine, use microtex needles if you can, because the sharper the needles, the easier it is to sew the knit. Try not to stretch the knit as you're sewing it and gently guide it under your machine, because when you stretch while sewing a knit, it results in those bumpy seam lines that are just not cute. But here you can see how nice my seams turned out. It's nice and flat. Next, we're going to take the raw edges of those shoulder seams and serge them together. Again, you're feeding that fabric through, not really pulling it because you don't want it to stretch while you're serging it. I am using a brother serger, and you can see right there it's the 1634D. I do like it, but if you can switch to an industrial serger, if you have the space or the money for it, it's a lot faster than this one. And since I do have an industrial serger, I actually changed my home serger into a baby rolled hem one, and I have another tutorial on how to do that. I personally like how more polished this finishing is on knits. And while I was at the serger, I did go ahead and just serge around the raw edge of the neck as well. Once you are done serging, we're going to head over to the ironing board and press those seams towards the back. I'm using a muslin pattern piece as a press cloth because it was nearby, but also because, as you can see, there's a finishing on my fabric and I was kind of afraid it was going to transfer to my iron. Now we are onto the sleeves. If you are making a tank top, just skip this step entirely. The sleeve piece should have been notched at the center, and you're going to take that center notch and line it up to the shoulder seam of the bodice. I'm going to pin here to keep it in place. I'm walking my pieces here just to double check the seam, but the sleeve piece should match perfectly to that arm size because, again, you definitely want no stretching to occur when you're sewing, and I know sometimes it can be unavoidable because the fabric slips or something, so if you need to, just pin incrementally along that arm side and sew up to that point. Do not sew over the pins, but just pull out the pins right before you're about to sew over it, and that can also help from the sliding. And definitely take your time with the seam because it's a curved seam, and I know those are the hardest to sew. But once you're done sewing the sleeve to the arm side, you are going to serge those raw edges together. Next, we're going to take it back to the ironing board where we're going to actually press the seam allowance towards the hem of the sleeve, so this should be away from the shoulder seam and it will help it lay nice and flat. Ironing is such a crucial part to sewing because it really makes a difference between your project looking like a home sewing project and a professional sewing project. So even though you feel like you're running out of time, don't get tempted and skip the steps. So we're going to sew the side seam of the shirt, which is actually really short. It's going to be a 2-inch. I like to match up the seams of the arm side, so that's why I'm pinning it here so it lines up when I sew. Repeat the step for the other side of the shirt. This is what it should look like, and as you can see, my seams match at the arm side and it's nice and flat. And now we're going to jump back to the serger to serge those raw edges together, and we'll serge both sides of the side seams. These steps are pretty repetitive, so after learning how to make this top one time, you guys are going to be able to fly through these steps the next time you make this top, and it's going to go by so much faster. Side seams are now done, and this is what it should look like. Like I said, I do a baby rolled hem on the finishing, and I press the side seams towards the back of the shirt. Next, we're going to finish the sleeves, so what we're going to do is do a rolled hem finish on the raw edges of that sleeve hem. A rolled hem is when you fold over the edge of the hem twice so that it ends up encasing that raw edge, and you're rolling it towards the inside of the shirt. I was too lazy to actually pin it all around, so I just used the measuring guide on my sewing machine to keep it nice and even. And we're going to do the rolled hem finish on both of the sleeves. How it ends up looking, I'm obsessed with this fabric. It looks so cool. And now we're going to do the exact same finishing to the bottom of the t-shirt. We're going to do that rolled over hem at 3/8 of an inch. Your shirt at this point should be pretty completed, and the only part left is that back cutout. And the back cutout is raw, so we're going to serge all around. And once you finish serging all around, you're going to continue to finish this edge, because what we're going to do is fold over once and create a channel for your ribbon. How much you fold over is really dependent on what size ribbon you're going to use. So for me, I don't know why, but I thought an extra wide ribbon at 1.5 inch was going to look super cute, but I do recommend 1/2 inch ribbon or even smaller for a more gathered look. I feel like because my ribbon was too wide, it didn't gather as much as I would have liked it to. I'm committed. So once again, we're going to finish the back cutout by folding over once and then sewing along that edge. We're gonna do this all the way around, and this time I did pin it because I had to fold so much over that it was gathering at certain parts. And this is how the back of my shirt turned out. I did fold over a lot more than I was supposed to, and that's why you see all these gathers, but it's just supposed to be the channel for my ribbon, so that's okay. And now we are on to the final steps of finishing this shirt. If you haven't already, serge the raw edge of your neck. Then we are going to fold it in, which means wrong sides together, 1/2 inch. And when you are folding that neck inwards, you're going to match it up at the side seams of the neck and pin it. Because what we are trying to do is not have a visible seam at the neck and have a more polished finishing, because we're going to do this method called stitch in the ditch. And by matching up the neck seams, you're going to sew into that seam so that the stitches are hidden. And that will keep the neck folded for when you do wear it. And once you're done with that, we're going to press the neck folded just so that I can have that nice crease at the top of the neck. If you ended up purchasing a finished trim to thread through the back of your shirt, then you can completely skip this step. I'm using a double folded bias, so I ended up having to sew down the one side of the bias closed and the other side as well, so that it could be a finished ribbon for myself. And this is my little hack to thread the ribbon through any type of channel. This also works for corsets. Take a safety pin to guide the ribbon through the channel. Really thread your ribbon through. You're going to push the fabric onto that safety pin and pull slightly as you go all around. Be careful not to pull too hard because you might pop some stitches. If you are afraid that you might pop some stitches when you're sewing down that channel, you can always sew it twice to avoid that. But once you have fully threaded that ribbon through, you're going to gently disperse all of those gathers. And to finish the ribbon edges, we're just going to melt it with a lighter. And this would only work if you're using a synthetic material, so the ribbon has to be like polyester or something for this to work. If it is silk or any natural fibers, what's going to happen is you're going to have that dark black edge. Congratulations on making it to the end of this tutorial. You now have a great staple piece for your closet. And thank you so much for following along on the sewing pattern tutorial. I do take every comment and feedback you guys give me into consideration and made this as beginner friendly as possible. If there are still things you guys think I can improve on, please let me know below. And don't forget to follow and subscribe to see more of my sewing tutorials.